We're going to talk about numbers today, how to get your numbers dialed in, your finances in your business, how much time you're spending with clients versus how much money you're making, all of it.
Welcome to Thriving Launch with Louise Congdon and Kamala Chambers, the show for heart-centered entrepreneurs who want it all.
Maybe you can relate to this. When I was a full-time coach, I found that I had to keep repeating the same things to people over and over and over again, and it got to be kind of draining, and I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing anymore. So what I decided to do was record the things that I had to tell clients over and over and over again. And then I packaged those recordings together and sold them as an online course. If you're interested in creating and selling your own online course, head over to thrivinglaunch.com and I have a free training for you on how to create and make passive income through your own online course.
We are here with an author, a podcast host, Ingrid Thompson. She is one of Australia's foremost authorities in the area of getting ready to start a small business.
Hey, we're so thrilled to have you here talking about healthy numbers, both your business and the act of creating healthy numbers in our own businesses. Can you just tell us a little bit to get started about what does it take to know that your numbers are healthy in your business?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you. Firstly, you have to want to be looking at them. It's amazing how many people, when they are in a business, that they're keen to get their website going, they're keen to get their products up and running and take care of their customers. But when we look at numbers, whether that's how many calls we take, whether it's how long we spend on the phone with someone, whether it's how many clients do we need to talk to in order to make one sale? Those are all the sorts of numbers that we really need to be looking at. And the more we get involved with taking stock of the numbers in the business, it becomes more interesting, especially as you watch profit increase, as you watch revenue grow. You start to understand where the money goes in terms of looking at expenses, looking at costs. I mean, the numbers are just endless. Every single aspect is about numbers. And, there's lots of people get terrifically excited about their Facebook page numbers, their Instagram, how many look at them, how many likes. That's all part of the numbers journey. So, yeah, the business is called Healthy Numbers because we actually just want numbers to be healthy across all aspects of the business.
When we're just starting to consider what our numbers are in our business beyond our Facebook likes, what is the best place to start? What is the most important, highest priority, best place to start?
The finances, absolutely the finances. The first thing to understand is how much it costs to run the business. So, for a lot of people running a business, it's a laptop and a good internet connection. And apart from that, there's probably not a lot of other expenses. And there's all those little monthly ones that sneak up. And so you can think that it's not a very expensive business to run. But by the time you add your insurance and your monthly charge for your email campaigns and your monthly charge for Zoom or whatever else you use to host webinars. So these can all add up. And when we have an idea of how much that is and how much money we need to make every month, then we get what's called a break even. And break even is where you pay yourself the right amount of money, you cover all your costs, and that's break even. And then everything else after that is profit. And it's a really simple calculation to do, but that's the most important one first. And then after that is the customers and conversion rates. And that gets a little bit more complicated, but that again is quite basic. How many calls do you have to make? How many calls do you take? How many inquiries do you have before you make a sale? And that's basic conversion. So those are two really important ones to really watch out for.
Do you recommend a certain software or something that you like to use? I know another one of our guests recommended just using a Google template for tracking your numbers, which is something that I like to do. What do you recommend?
Well, for the finances, depending on how much is going on, if you're having a lot of customers and a lot of money coming and going, one of the MYOB or the Zero packages can be very beneficial. And they can also help if you're creating a product to keep track of, the invoices coming in and paying those invoices on time. For the first couple of years in my business, I had a Excel spreadsheets, and in fact the first year I started off making a sleepwear product, a woman's cotton sleepwear, what's called a nightie, which is a sleep dress, and I had a notebook and pencil, and I had my costs written on one page and I had my income written on the other page. So it's just important to track it, whatever's going to be the easiest for you. And I think what I say to people is, what is something that you're going to do? Like if logging into Xero is onerous and fiddling around with Excel is too much for you, if a notebook and pencil is the best way for you, then do what is going to help you keep track. That's the most important thing.
How do you track the client conversions, or what's a good way that you think people can do that, especially when you maybe take into account the expenses of driving and seeing a client, or refunds if you're selling digital products and that kind of thing?
That's a great question. And that's where I guess some of the software can really help. Like if you're using Constant Contact or MailChimp or Campaign Monitor for emails, and you're having how much traction are you getting, how many people are opening emails, how many conversations of emails go backwards and forwards, to actually track a prospect who then becomes a client before they actually buy. If you're actually having meetings with people and tracking your time, it's such a great question in terms of tracking how much time is actually spent on each customer. And I think there's some really wise decisions to be made about really spending quality time with each customer in the beginning, really understanding what it is they want. And again, that can either be tracked through your calendar or in something like HubSpot. Those allow you to track the time in there, that you can say, you had this meeting and it took an hour to drive there. And there's also the preparation time. I think people underestimate, if you're going to have a meeting with someone, you don't just put your glad rags on and jump in the car and get there, or an Uber. You actually spend an hour researching their business, having a look at what they've sent to you in the past, how many of your emails have they opened, what has been the conversations up to this point, so that you're actually prepared to go and have that meeting. So that's part of your preparation time. And I think when you start to add all of that up, the cost of acquiring a new customer can be quite significant. And that's why when we talk about retaining customers is so important, because that's another measure that's tremendously neglected by a lot of people, is what is the retention rate or the attrition rate, that leaky bucket. People flow in the front door, but they're leaving out through the windows and the back door. If you get 5 new customers this month, do you have those 5 customers each and every month going forward? And if not, where are they going? Why are they leaving? Why are they making alternate choices? So, the cost of acquisition of a customer is probably a lot higher than most people would consider. It's a great question. Thank you for that.
So what else do you think we need to know about numbers?
Well, I think it's really being important to look at the ones that are the costs for you. I worked with a client and she was selling a beautiful product, but every time she sold the product, she actually lost money because it was costing her more to put together the product than it was to actually the revenue she was getting for it. And so I think often when people are selling a product, and I know a lot of people have online products, is that because they haven't actually factored in the total cost, is that the actual revenue doesn't cover the cost of actually setting up the product. Now, I've just created a new website. I've written a book. I've created an online program. Now, if I was to factor all my hours into how much the website has cost, how much my time has been over the last 6 months and the last couple of years putting together the book, if I factor my cost into all of that, there's a lot of books to be sold. There's a lot of online programs to sell in order to cover those. And so making a decision about, is that an investment in my business, or are these expenses that actually need to be covered? And in fact, the reality is that for me, if I send a book to someone, the cost of the postage and the cost of the purchase of the book is really my cost. For me to then go back and say, well, there's 2 years worth of effort gone into creating the book, that's an investment in my business. So that becomes an asset in my business as opposed to an expense. And so that's a decision to make when you're actually looking at the numbers. What are the things that are investments in your business and that therefore are assets that it's not that you don't recover the cost, but they're part of what the business is worth in an overall sense. So I think that's something to have a think about when people are making big investments in their business, like websites and online programs, because to try to factor back the cost of creating those, it would be very, very, would be difficult to calculate and would be difficult to recover. I think Apple's a great example of that. You know, that phone that we buy, we pay $1,000 for an Apple phone. We're paying for all the investment, but if we really were paying for all the investment, would we ever be able to afford an Apple phone? Does that make sense?
It really does. And before we go, what is the one big action step that you say thriving launchers go out today and do and make sure that you have dialed in for your numbers?
I think the one big action step is to actually create what's called a dashboard and choose maybe 2 or 3 really important numbers to track. And it's not just your Facebook likes. You're going to track those anyway, but really dial in on how much it's costing to run the business, how much profit are you really making, and how much are you paying yourself? Like really get a handle on some of those financials, and then have a really good look at the cost of acquisition of new clients and see what it is that it's costing to acquire new clients, and then how much value do you really place on those people once you have them? Because I think it's not just that somebody has paid you money, $20 for a book or $79 for an online program. What they've actually done is they've had a huge amount of faith in you, and they've invested a lot of their time and energy making the decision to purchase that. And I think we underestimate it's not just the number of the $79 in our bank account or whatever that money value is. It's the investment that that person has made by trusting your business, and to have a really good appreciation of that, not just about the number. And I think that's where it can be quite misinterpreted that numbers are the only things. Yes, I make 6 figures but people are having faith in your business and handing over their hard-earned money for what you're offering. So yeah, have a dashboard, pick a couple of numbers and track them for the next 6 months.
Ingrid Thompson of Healthy Numbers. We've been talking about how to get your finances and all the numbers in your business tracked and dialed in. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I encourage you all to go out and do that action plan that Ingrid laid out for you. Keep thriving, everyone. You've been listening to the Thriving Launch podcast. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure to head over to thrivinglaunch.com. We'll see you there.